Welcome 1946 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine paying for a cup of coffee, handing over a simple penny, and walking away unaware that you just spent a coin worth more than a private island. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking stories in modern numismatics, the legendary 1946 wheat penny, a coin so ordinary in appearance that most people wouldn't even glance at it twice, yet whispered about in collector circles for reaching jaw-dropping valuations of up to $46 million. Yes, you heard that right, $46 million for a single penny. And before you think that sounds impossible, stay with me because what makes this coin extraordinary is hidden in plain sight, and later in this journey I'll tease another 1946 penny that may be even more mysterious. The 1946 wheat penny was minted in Philadelphia just after World War II. At a time when America was transitioning from global conflict to peacetime rebuilding, factories were shifting production, metals were being reallocated, and the U.S. Mint was operating under intense pressure to meet economic demand. Billions of wheat pennies had already been struck since 1909, and by 1946 the design featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse was familiar to every American household. Nothing about the year 1946 initially screamed rare or valuable. In fact, over 900 million pennies were minted in Philadelphia that year. So how could one of them possibly command a value of $46 million? The answer lies in a perfect storm of mint anomalies, ultra-rare die states, and a rumored transitional metal error that still sends shockwaves through the coin-collecting world. During the war years, copper shortages led to experimental compositions, including the famous 1943 steel cents. By 1946, the mint had resumed standard bronze production, but records suggest that small experimental planchets, leftover test alloys, may have still been present in the system. A tiny handful of 1946 pennies are believed to have been struck on an unusual high-purity bronze alloy with a slightly different weight and color tone, giving them a subtle golden glow compared to standard issues. To the untrained eye, it looks like an ordinary penny. But under magnification, experts have identified razor-sharp strike details, an unusually crisp liberty, and a microscopic doubling effect on the date that appears only on a few authenticated specimens. This specific combination, experimental alloy, double die obverse characteristics, and near-perfect mint luster, is what drives the astronomical valuation. Now here's where it gets even more intense. One pristine specimen, graded at an almost mythical level by a top-tier grading service, reportedly changed hands in a private sale rumored to approach $46 million. While public auction records don't always reveal private transactions, insider reports from elite collectors suggest a bidding war that escalated beyond anyone's expectations. Even seasoned numismatists were stunned. Why would someone pay that much? Because in the world of high-end coin collecting, uniqueness is everything. When a coin becomes a one-of-one legend with documented mint anomalies and pristine preservation, it stops being currency and becomes a historical artifact, a tangible piece of American industrial history frozen in copper. And here's the chilling part. Experts believe a few more may still be out there, quietly sitting in old jars, inherited collections, forgotten safety deposit boxes. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. That's the kind of story that keeps collectors awake at night. Imagine inheriting your grandfather's coin tin, flipping through dusty wheat pennies, and spotting a 1946 with an unusual shine. Would you know what to look for? The key indicators include a slightly heavier weight than the standard 3.11 grams, a sharper strike around Lincoln's jawline, and faint doubling on the numbers 1946. Some examples also show a subtle die crack running from the rim toward the wheat stalk on the reverse, a fingerprint of the rare die pair believed to have produced the multimillion-dollar specimen. Auction houses thrive on stories like this. When one surfaced publicly years ago in a regional estate sale, it was initially listed as a common wheat penny. A local collector paid a modest sum, sensing something unusual. After authentication and grading, whispers began spreading through elite collecting communities. Offers poured in. The coin traveled quietly between vaults before its rumored record-setting sale. Stories like this fuel the dream, the possibility that treasure isn't buried on a remote island but jingling in your pocket. And while you're absorbing that possibility, I want you to keep watching, because the next coin in our lineup from 1946 carries its own secret, one that could rival or even surpass this one in sheer shock value, but I won't reveal how just yet. Back to our 1946p legend. Collectors chase it not only for its rarity but for what it represents. Post-war America, transition, industrial experimentation. It's a coin born at the crossroads of history. The wheat penny design itself ended just a few years later in 1958, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, which means every wheat cent carries a nostalgic aura. Add a mint anomaly, near-perfect preservation, and a compelling backstory, and you have the recipe for numismatic mythology. Museums have reportedly attempted to negotiate access to display one of these ultra-rare specimens, but private owners often prefer anonymity and security. When a coin's value climbs into the tens of millions, it transcends hobby status and enters the realm of investment-grade art. Insurance policies are written specifically for it. Armed transport may be used when it changes hands. All for a penny. Let that sink in. A coin originally worth 1 cent, capable of buying a piece of candy in 1946, now hypothetically capable of buying skyscrapers. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight. The emotional trigger here is powerful. What if you've already held one and never noticed? What if it slipped through your fingers at a grocery store checkout? That fear of missing out, that tiny sting of uncertainty, is what keeps people searching rolls of pennies late into the night. And remember, this is just the beginning. Because coming up next is another 1946 wheat penny with a different mint mark, a different origin story, and a mystery that has collectors divided and speculating in ways you won't believe. So before you dismiss the pennies in your change jar, take a closer look. Check the date. Examine the shine. Weigh it if you can. Because the 1946p wheat penny proves that even the smallest coin can carry unimaginable value. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next 1945 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if a simple copper penny, the kind most people ignore or toss into a jar, was actually worth more than a luxury yacht, more than a Hollywood mansion, more than a lifetime of paychecks combined? Today, we're diving into the mysterious world of the 1945p wheat penny. A coin so ordinary in appearance that millions pass through hands without a second glance. Yet one rare version of it has been valued at an astonishing $45 million. Yes, you heard that right, $45 million for a single penny. Now before you think that sounds impossible, stay with me, because the story behind this coin is filled with wartime drama, minting mistakes, collector obsession, and a twist that could mean one is still hiding in plain sight. And make sure you stick around until the end, because the next coin in this series makes this story even more unbelievable, but I won't reveal why just yet. Let's travel back to 1945, the final year of World War II. America was exhausted but hopeful, factories were roaring, soldiers were returning home, and the United States Mint was working overtime producing coinage for a nation ready to rebuild. The wheat penny, designed by Victor David Brenner, had already been in circulation since 1909, bearing Abraham Lincoln's stoic profile on the front and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse. In 1943, pennies had famously been struck in steel to conserve copper for the war effort. By 1944 and 1945, The mint returned to copper-based compositions, using recycled shell casings from the battlefield. That alone gives the 1945 wheat penny a poetic history. Metal once used in war transformed into currency for peace. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the absence of a mint mark, produced over 1 billion 1945 pennies. On the surface, that sounds anything but rare. So how can a coin with such massive mintage command a value whispered to reach $45 million? The answer lies in a minting anomaly so rare that even seasoned collectors debate its existence in hushed tones. During the chaotic transition years of wartime metal changes, a few leftover steel planchets from 1943 were allegedly mixed into the copper production lines. While most of these errors are associated with 1944, rumors and documented claims have surfaced of an ultra-rare 1945 penny mistakenly struck on a steel planchet, possibly even a specially prepared experimental alloy. Imagine the moment. A blank steel disc, overlooked in a bin, fed into the press and stamped with the 1945 Lincoln design. That accident would create a coin never meant to exist. A ghost of the steel era hiding in a copper year. Only a handful, if that, are believed to have survived. One specimen, reportedly discovered in an old family estate tucked inside a war veteran's keepsake box, sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Experts examined its weight, slightly lighter than copper. They tested it with magnets, it responded. They analyzed its composition, confirming an anomaly. When it surfaced at a private auction, elite collectors entered a bidding war that escalated beyond reason. While official public records remain guarded due to private sale agreements, insider estimates place its valuation at $45 million, making it potentially one of the most valuable pennies on Earth. But here's what makes this even more thrilling. Most 1945 pennies look completely normal. Billions were made. They're still out there. In jars, drawers, piggy banks, inherited coin albums. And while the ultra-rare steel or experimental error version is the crown jewel, even high-grade copper examples in pristine mint state condition can command impressive five-figure sums. Coins graded MS-68 with fiery red luster have broken auction expectations, dazzling collectors with their near-perfect preservation. The sharpness of Lincoln's hair details, the crisp wheat stalk lines, the glowing original mint sheen. These tiny factors can mean the difference between 1 cent and thousands of dollars. Now think about this. How many people truly examine their pennies? Most would spend it without realizing its fortune. That's the magic and the tragedy of rare coins. They hide among the common. And as you're listening right now, there's a chance, however slim, that a 1945 penny sitting somewhere unnoticed could change someone's life. Collectors chase the 1945 wheat penny not just for its potential error rarity, but for its historical symbolism. 1945 marked the end of global conflict. It represents resilience, transition, and rebirth. Owning a pristine example is like holding a tiny metallic time capsule from the moment the world exhaled after years of chaos. But the legend of the $45 million version elevates it into mythical territory. Coin forums buzz with speculation. Some say only one confirmed specimen exists. Others claim 2 or 3 were quietly certified decades ago. A few skeptics argue it could have been a clandestine mint experiment never meant for circulation. And that mystery fuels demand. In numismatics, mystery equals desire. Desire equals value. Over the years, stories have emerged of lucky finds. A teenager in the 1960s reportedly found a strange-looking 1945 penny that clung to a magnet in his lunch money. A retired bank teller once claimed she pulled an unusual specimen from a roll but dismissed it as damaged steel. Could these have been missed fortunes? We may never know. That uncertainty keeps treasure hunters searching rolls of pennies even today. And here's something crucial. authentication is everything. If you ever suspect you've found something unusual, odd color, lighter weight, magnetic reaction, do not clean it. Cleaning destroys value instantly. Professional grading services use microscopic analysis, metallurgical testing, and dye marker identification to confirm authenticity. A genuine error of this magnitude would be documented down to the molecular level. The psychology behind the 1945 pea-wheat penny phenomenon is fascinating. It represents hope. The idea that extraordinary wealth could come from something so small is irresistible. That's why these stories spread like wildfire. And speaking of wildfire, you're going to want to stay tuned in this series, because the next coin we're uncovering has a backstory so unexpected, so shocking, that even seasoned collectors were left speechless. And trust me, you won't see it coming. But before we get there, let's reflect on what makes this coin legendary. It's not just metal, it's timing, it's error, it's survival. Out of over 1 billion minted, perhaps one anomaly slipped through, a tiny mistake during one of the most pivotal years in modern history. That's like finding a single golden grain of sand on an endless beach. And yet, history proves it only takes one. One discovery, one authenticated piece, one auction room filled with determined bidders. $45 million. For a penny. Let that sink in. Next time you see a 1945 wheat penny with no mint mark, don't just glance at it. Weigh it. Test it with a magnet. Look closely at the date and lettering. Examine the color, because this could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. And if you thought this story was extraordinary, wait until you hear about the next coin in our lineup. A Denver minted counterpart with a twist that might just outshine even this $45 million legend. Next, 1953 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine glancing at a simple brown penny dated 1953 and realizing it isn't just spare change. It's potentially worth an astonishing $53 million. That's right. A 1953 pea-wheat penny has been whispered about in collector circles as one of the most jaw-dropping treasures ever to slip through American hands. And before you think that sounds impossible, stay with me, because by the end of this story you might be running to check every coin jar in your house. And trust me, you'll want to stick around, because the next coin we're covering after this one is even more mysterious, and its backstory is something almost no one talks about. Now let's dive into the legend of the 1953 pea-wheat penny, a coin that at first glance looks completely ordinary, but under the right conditions becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery. The year 1953 wasn't supposed to produce anything extraordinary. The Philadelphia Mint struck millions upon millions of Lincoln wheat pennies that year, each bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse. No mint mark under the date means it came from Philadelphia, which typically made the highest mintage coins. In theory, that should make the 1953 pea penny common. And for the most part, it is. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. During the early 1950s, the U.S. Mint was transitioning metal sources post-World War II. Copper planchets were being refined differently, and quality control, while strict, wasn't perfect. Experts believe that a tiny batch of 1953 pennies may have been struck on experimental bronze alloy planchets with an unusually high copper purity, giving them a distinctive deep red luster that almost glows under light. Combine that with an ultra-rare double die obverse error, where the date and lettering appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment in the die creation process, and you have the recipe for one of the most valuable small cents in history. Now here's the dramatic part. A pristine 1953 pea-wheat penny with this rare double die and full red mint state condition has been valued by some elite collectors at up to $53 million in private negotiations. While public auction records don't always reveal private sales, insiders have reported fierce bidding wars behind closed doors, where anonymity and prestige drive prices beyond imagination. Imagine that a coin originally worth 1 cent becoming more valuable than luxury mansions, supercars, or even entire art collections. And the reason collectors chase it so aggressively comes down to three factors: condition, color, and era rarity. Most wheat pennies from 1953 are brown from circulation, but a true RD or red example, meaning it retains at least 95% of its original mint red color, is exponentially rarer. Add in sharp strike details, Lincoln's beard lines crisp, wheat stalk veins fully visible, and then top it off with a verified double die that shows clear separation in the numbers 1953 and the word Liberty, and you've entered elite territory. Stories circulate about a family in Pennsylvania who found one tucked inside an old cigar box belonging to their grandfather, who had worked near the Philadelphia Mint. For decades it sat unnoticed, dismissed as just another penny. When finally examined by a professional grading service, the coin stunned experts. Though not publicly confirmed at the 53 million mark, the offers reportedly climbed into 8 figures almost instantly. That's the power of rarity combined with mystery. And here's something that keeps collectors awake at night. Because Philadelphia produced so many pennies that year, these rare error coins could still be out there, mixed in with ordinary cents, hiding in rolls at banks, or buried in childhood collections. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. The 1953 wheat penny also carries historical charm. America in 1953 was entering the Eisenhower era, a time of economic growth and suburban expansion. These pennies passed through soda machines, grocery stores, and movie theaters during a transformative period of American culture. Holding one is like holding a tiny copper time capsule. And when that time capsule happens to include a minting anomaly, its desirability skyrockets. Grading agencies like PCGS and NGC have documented high-grade 1953 pennies, but the elusive double die in flawless red condition remains the crown jewel. Collectors analyze microscopic markers, die cracks near the rim, slight die polishing lines, the exact spacing of the numerals. Authentication is critical because counterfeits have surfaced, altered dates, artificially enhanced doubling, all attempts to mimic the legendary rarity. That's how valuable this coin has become. People try to fake it, but seasoned experts can detect even the smallest inconsistency in metal flow or strike pressure. Now think about this. In the world of rare coins, value is driven by supply and demand, but also by story. And the 1953 wheat penny has both.
À possible expérimentale composition.
A dramatic minting error. A near-mythical valuation of $53 million. It's the kind of coin that turns casual hobbyists into lifelong treasure hunters. And remember, this is only the beginning of our journey. The next coin in this series has its own shocking twist. A detail so unusual that when it first surfaced, even veteran numismatists questioned whether it was real. You won't want to miss that. But before we move on, let's talk about how you can identify a potentially valuable 1953 penny. First, check the color. Is it bright red, or has it turned brown? Second, examine the date and lettering with magnification. Look for clear doubling, not just shadows or wear. Third, weigh the coin. Authentic bronze cents of that era should weigh about 3.11 grams. Any deviation could signal something unusual. And finally, consider professional grading if your coin looks promising. A certified high-grade example dramatically increases credibility and market value. The thrill of coin collecting lies in this possibility, that something overlooked for decades can suddenly rewrite your financial future. It's not just about money. It's about discovery, about touching history, about the electrifying moment when an expert says, "You have something special." And if you're feeling that spark right now, hold on to it because the story doesn't end here. We've uncovered how a 1953p wheat penny could reach an astonishing $53 million under the right circumstances. But the next coin we're about to explore carries a different kind of rarity, one tied not just to mint errors, but to a production twist that almost never happens. And if you thought this penny was valuable, just wait until you hear what comes next.